20 years. This is my 20th year there, my 28th year as a teacher. My bio, just because, I don't know, when I go to a clinic, I like to know who I'm listening to. So I gave you some info about me, what I've done, where I'm from. And I'm not going to talk about that and just let you read it. But I guess I'm here to talk to you about the teaching jazz aspect of teaching. What year are all of you in your school? What year are we?
Senior.
Junior.
Senior.
So junior, seniors, anybody senior?
Freshman.
Freshman?
Oh.
Nice.
Forgot one.
Believe it or not, I remember my freshman year in college very well, and like it was like last week, so it all goes by really fast. But anyway, there's so much to talk about as far as the whole aspect of just being a music educator, everything that goes into it, just how I got into my program at my school. I have 5 classes. I have 4 concert bands at my middle school, and I have 1.5 jazz bands at this point. That's kind of a different story, but and so I have a beginning band class. I have a 6th grade intermediate band class. I have 2 advanced band classes that are 2 separate bands, and I have a jazz band class. And a lot of programs, middle schools have their jazz bands after school, before school, whatever. I actually have been able to have at least 1, some years 2, jazz band classes in the school schedule during the school day. The way we have things structured. So this year it's just 1 jazz band class with 27 kids in it. And all those kids are also enrolled in an advanced band class, so they have 2 band classes as part of their schedule. I mean, how I got into that, I got my job at Los Cerritos, and the first year I taught there, I had 4 band classes and a choir class. And yes, I can teach choir. First thing I ever did as a musician, I was 2 years old in my church choir, and I sang my whole life. So I taught choir for a year. They told me, do it for a year, get the class to get bigger, we'll get a choir teacher for that, and we'll give you a 5th band class. So I did that, and they asked me, what do you want your 5th class to be? I said, jazz band. And they said, really? You don't want strings? No. You don't want strings? Hire a string teacher. I want jazz band. So they gave me jazz band, and they hired my wife to teach strings.
Nice.
So, so we have jazz band there. When I got to college, I'd been in jazz band in high school. Got to college, auditioned for the college jazz band as a freshman, and I have no idea how it happened, but I made first chair of the top jazz band at my college as a freshman, and played in that band for 4 years. Learned a lot. Before that, I really wasn't a jazz player, and I'm really still not like, you know, go out and play gigs all the time jazz player. All my training is on the orchestral and concert band side of playing trombone. I can play jazz, just not like the guys across in the A band. You know? And by the way, I was just listening to them. I heard them through the door, went in, listened for about 10 minutes. If you want to learn how jazz should sound, just go Monday nights and listen to that band and spend a half hour and just take it in, because it's that's your #1 way to learn this. Anyway, so I did the jazz band in college. I didn't teach jazz band when I taught in Tennessee, didn't have the opportunity. So my first opportunity was out here, and I got to use all the tools that I learned in the jazz band in college out here. Interestingly enough, I realized just recently that when I would sit down in a jazz band and play the music, and I would play it with the right style and the right phrasing and articulation, and it just kind of happened. Nobody specifically taught me how to do it, and I'd always wondered, how was I able to do that? And then I realized, when I was a kid in the 70s, There was a TV show on Saturday nights called Emergency 51. All right, it was my favorite TV show. The show on before that was the Lawrence Welk Show. And every Saturday night, my mom and dad would sit down and watch the Lawrence Welk Show. If you've never seen the Lawrence Welk Show, it's all over YouTube, just look it up. It was a variety show based here in LA. All the musicians in the band were LA musicians. All the singers were LA singers. And they were some of the best in the world at what they did. And so every Saturday night I listened to swing band music and blues and all the show tunes and all that stuff played. And that's where it got in my head, how to play jazz and make it sound stylistically correct. And I didn't realize till recently it was that TV show that did it, but it really was. And it had nothing to do with what anybody taught me specifically, play it like this, play it like that. No, it was just my entire childhood on Saturday night watching that show and listening to it. And so the theme of my clinic tonight is going to be the listening aspect of everything and tying that in. How many of you are avid jazz listeners? It's part of what you listen to like all the time. Yeah, if it's not, it should be part of what you listen to at least some of the time, right? Because if you're going to teach it, you've got to know what it's supposed to sound like, and then how to translate that into kid terms, and getting them to do it the way that you're hearing it in your head. Now, the best way to do that is you listen to it with them, so you get them to listen to it. Oh, you want. Let's play this song, but first let's listen to it. Right. So in the handout here, I got just a lot of stuff. I only have an hour, and there's so many things that I left out of this because there's no way I could get to it in the clinic. What I can probably do is type up kind of an addendum to this and send it to you, and you can blast it out to all of them. But there are a lot of Latin music things that aren't in here, that kind of thing. This is just dealing basically with some concepts of teaching articulation, listening, setting up the band, what you're going to need for that. Jazz festivals, how those work. All of you are going to be teachers. You're studying music ed. You're going to be teachers on one level or another. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and anticipating teaching band, or are we shooting for choir? I mean, that's great. No, that's great. But often as young teachers, we go in and we get a job. We find ourselves in front of a group that we didn't train for. Right, and we've got to kind of know how to make it work and be intuitive with it. So, anyway, a lot of stuff going on, and it looks like my guys put this in the wrong order. Okay, yeah. So I had my TAs staple this up for me today, and it looks like they flipped some pages backwards. So the first page is jazz strategies that make sense. That's page 1. Now I'm not going to read this to you word for word, just scan through that. And the second part's what's important. It's a great way to get started. In my jazz class right now, the first thing I did was I handed out songs from a book listed in here, the Real Easy book. And it's just it's a song. It's the changes on the other page. It's chords and scales and the bass line. And I said, okay, let's learn this, and now let's learn these scales, and now let's learn to improvise a little bit with some notes from the scale. And now some of you play the melody, some of you play your solo, and now let's switch. So they just get comfortable playing jazz in its basic form, which is that. It's a lead sheet. It's the melody, it's changes, and then you make everything else up, right? So the accessible songs, and this is just such a short list. There's so many more, but all of these on this list are easy melodies to play, and they are easy changes to work with for. Does everybody know what I mean when I say changes? Yeah? Yeah, okay. So easy changes to work with. Most of them are blues. A couple of them are modal. You know what I mean when I say modal? Yeah, a couple chords back and forth, and that's it, right? Okay. So I never know what groups know when I'm talking to, so I have to ask these questions. Just like in your classes when you're teaching, you never know what your kids know and what they don't know, so you always have to ask them, do you know this, do you know this? And it gives you a starting point. So first thing you do is just take those songs, and I'm saying songs, even though when we play our instruments, we're not singing the words, they're still songs. They're a melody. You can hum them, and they're written as songs. They're in song form, and so there's no reason not to call them songs. Yeah, listen, and then have them play, have the kids play, listen to it again, have them play. Do that several times, and you'll hear them start to sound like the recording on their own. See how much of this they can do intuitively on their own. Instead of saying, okay, stop, no, you gotta do it this way, just let them play. And because they'll intuitively catch on to a lot of it without you having to teach them a thing. And once you found out what they're gonna be able to catch on to, then you know where to fill in the gaps. Okay, well, they're getting this, but they're not getting this, so I need to work on that right there. So then we get into the jazz articulation and style. Well, I'll get to that later. You listen to the songs. Swing style isn't really a rhythm. It's more of an articulation and a feel, right? A lot of people tie it to, it's triplets, da 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 da, but it's really not. It's more of a feel, do da do da do da do da do dot to do dot, and the articulation for it, the basic articulation is you tongue the upbeat and slur the downbeat. Do da oo da oo da oo da oo da oo da oo. All right, and then you branch off from there and make it, to have some variations. But for the most part, that's the basic swing style of articulation that you want to use. And when you listen to bands like Count Basie, there's a listening list of performers and bands down here. You listen to all these people, and you're going to hear a different version of that articulation from them. As different as they all are, they still have the same style of swing and drive and syncopation. So there's that. Hey there. What's up? Any questions? Were you just in the A-band rehearsal?
Yeah, we
Sounded awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, man.
We just finished.
Yeah. So, any questions so far? You sure? Okay, I'm counting on some questions here. I really am. And so after you've kind of gotten them listening to all this, I mean, my kids listen to a lot of jazz. I ask them every couple weeks, all right, guys, how many of you have listened to this? All right, who are you listening to now? Who do you like? Did you find anybody new? That kind of thing. And they can usually tell me somebody, oh yeah, I got this on Spotify the other day, and I want to know they're listening to this, because if all they're listening to is modern pop and hip hop and that kind of thing, then trying to teach them this is totally pointless, because they're not going to get it. And so they've got to be listening. And so after they're doing that, and you're talking about now, okay, now you know the song, you know how to play the melody, now let's talk about how to improvise. I really don't like that word very much. I like the word create, because improvisation means that you're taking random stuff and just playing it, and that's not really what it is. You're taking some specific stuff and creating something cool with it after a while, right? The stuff you've memorized and gotten more comfortable with, and you can use it more fluently, but improvisation is using memorized material to create something on the spot, to be an on-the-spot composer. So you have to know some basic things. So your major, minor scales, dominant scales, blues scales, bebop scales. You know what that is, bebop scale? You do? Tell me what a bebop scale is.
I mean, I know about it, I don't remember the...
It's a major scale with a flat seventh and a major seventh, both of them in the same scale. So you're going to go up to the seventh and play chromatic, flat 7, 7, 8, and then back down. That's the bebop scale. Yeah. Very simple. The dominant scale is a major chord with major scale with a flat seventh, and that's what you play in blues. Your dominant 7 chords are based on that scale with a flat 7. Your Dorian mode, most modal songs are written in Dorian mode, in whatever key that happens to be in, and you'll know it when you see it's the same chord just repeated over and over, or a couple chords going back and forth, right? It's probably modal, and the Dorian mode probably works. So, it's simple to take these things and plug them in. And then you have your students just use 3 notes from the scale, right? The first, fourth, and fifth, or the 1, 3, and 4, or you pick them, and just have them play 3 notes and start putting some rhythm with it, right? At the same time they're doing that, have part of the class play the melody from the song while the others improvise, because they can start tying in melodic ideas from the song to what they're improvising. It gives them some ideas for what to play. And it's about the ideas that's how many of you are jazz players? You improvise and are comfortable with it, right? So being comfortable with it is just about knowing for yourself that you know stuff to play, right? And so how many of you tried it? You've improvised and tried it. And how many of you failed? All right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So simplify it. I mean, I have up on the board some online resources, YouTube, Learn Jazz Standards, a bunch of videos of chord changes for different songs. Most of the songs I have listed here, you can find the changes to play to on Learn Jazz Standards. iReal Pro is an app for your phone, and you can download songs into it. It's basically the real book in an app. And so, my thing turned off. I gotta turn it back on. So, you can, let's see, where am I? Jazz, waltz, medium jazz. Here we go, blues. All right, so this is blues, minor, jazz, medium, swing. Okay, so I'm going to turn that on. It's in C. Oh. Unpaired. There we go. Are you on or off? It's off. Now it's on. You can, there we go.
Maybe you need to unplug it.
Is that plug?
Oh,
Wow, it worked.
turn on. You guys heard it work earlier, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want that on the record. All right, you can hear this though, right, on my phone?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can take that and use the C blues scale and just in a practice room, do some improv. Take 3 notes from the blues scale and play some basic, jazz rhythms, swing rhythms, and just improvise. Just use the 3 notes, get comfortable. Add a note, all right? Learn how to put passing notes in between, and get more comfortable doing it on your own, and then you'll be able to convey that, because everything you learn doing that, you'll be able to teach to a kid. Yeah, use your resources. All right, all right, how am I doing? Any questions so far? Yes?
Do you have your students, do they always do like improvised solos, or do they write like their own
It's a good
solos?
question. I've had some students, write out a solo and memorize it. I don't usually have them do that in a performance, but I'll tell them, okay, now you've got this solo and you've memorized it, that's great. Now I want you to just use parts of it and then make up some of your own stuff in between. I'll give them blank staff paper. I do this a lot. I'm a very low-tech teacher. I mean, I really am. I like to keep things simple. I don't use smart music. I used to, and I learned that I really hate it. I'm very low-tech, so I'll give kids a piece of blank staff paper and a pencil. Okay, let's start writing, and I teach them how to handwrite music because writing anything by hand it does different things to your brain, and it's much more effective than, so I'll have them write some things out. I'll say, okay, play something, you know, for me in this key or with this blues scale. Okay, great. Now try to write that down. What did you just play? Can you write it down? Right? Or I'll play a Miles Davis solo, an easy one, because a lot of Miles's solos are very accessible in learning how to play them. So you can take it and say, okay, he just played this. Can you figure those 3 notes out on your instrument? Yeah. Okay. Now can you write them down? Okay. So I'm teaching him how to do takedowns, right? And it used to be how people would do jazz arrangements. They'd turn the record on and they would listen to a measure and stop it and write this trumpet part and write out the notes, and then they'd go back and they'd write out the alto 1 part, and then they'd take the whole record down and measure at a time. And you know, so yeah, that's becoming a lost skill anymore, and it's really something that develops their ear in a different way. So yes, sometimes I'll have them play written solos, but when they stand up to play in a performance, they are at least some of it making it up. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions about the first part, the improv, any of that? Yes.
For the scales,
Mhm.
you explained what a bebop scale was, but what would be the difference between a blues scale and that?
Well, the blues scale is it's 1 flat 3 4, 5 flat 7, and the octave,
Okay.
right? And then you can put in the sharp 5 if you want to, or the flat 5. Sorry, the flat 5 to make it the full-on blues scale, right? But I guess I should have written that in. But you know, you can Google blues scale, and you know, a bunch of different versions will come up. And but yeah, that's the blues scale, and it's a pentatonic scale, right? Any other questions? All right, so we're kind of moving on. That's the basic part of teaching jazz improv to kids and having them be comfortable with it. I start with that because when you hand out the charts for them to play, and this isn't in the handout, but I should talk about it. I categorize jazz band into 2 different kind of groups. There's the dance band, which most middle schools and high schools have what we call the big band. It's really a dance band. That's what they were put together for back in the 30s and the 40s, play at the dance halls, and so they're really dance band. So, you know, Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey, Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Woody Herman, all those bands back then were dance bands. And so there are charts written for those bands with dance band instrumentation and rhythm section, right? And that's what most teachers teach at middle school and high school level. There's also jazz combo, the small group jazz, right? And that's just a rhythm section. It could be a rhythm section by itself, or plus 1 horn, plus 2 horns, plus a voice. And by the way, back in the people to listen to, I don't know if you read through it or not, but I've got in there Ella Fitzgerald with a D, Billie Holiday, Frank Sinatra, Diana Krall. Those are all great jazz vocalists. Everybody should listen. Even horn players should listen to them because you want to phrase like a vocalist when you play jazz on an instrument. You have to phrase like a vocalist. And the only way to learn how to do that is to listen to vocals. So, yeah, there's some good ones for you. So yeah, the dance band charts are great. There are combo charts you can get, but you know the real book, the real easy book, that's where you want to the music you want to use with your jazz combo, because it's just a lead sheet. So they all play the melody, they learn to harmonize to it, and then they play their solos, and you do it in a jazz combo setting and form rather than a dance band form. And it's 2 different perspectives of playing jazz. The combo form kind of came first in many ways, and then the dance band kind of built out from that, right? So now we talk about how to set up the band for, you know, how do you want to set the band up for class and for performances? So we go to set the stage for the band. Rhythm section. I don't have a guitar this year. Some years I have a guitar, some years I don't. I don't teach guitar, so when I have one, it's kind of awkward because they're learning the chords and things on their own, and hopefully have a private teacher who can show them, you know, the right way to do it. I do know how to set the instrument up to sound the way it should sound in a jazz band. So it says any electric guitar will work, right? But the ones I've listed are probably the best for the job. Then to get the right sound, and I had that in here, but I did some editing and I may have, it's in here somewhere else. Anyway.
It's on the second to last page.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there's a switch to choose the pickups on the guitar. You have the neck pickup, you have this you have usually 2 or 3 pickups. You want to flip the switch over and activate just the neck pickup. And you want to turn the tone knob way down so you get a dark sound on the guitar. And it should sound twangy at all. So it sounds like country bluegrass guitar or rock and roll guitar. You want to get away from that sound. You get a really nice dark mellow sound. Have them use a medium pick if they're going to use a pick. Otherwise, they can use their fingers. For bass, standard electric bass works fine. I use both. I use an electric upright with my kids because I find that with middle school kids, some of them are really small. If you have them, you know, with a big, huge acoustic bass, it can get cumbersome. And the upright electric has the sound I'm looking for, and it's easier to move around. So we use that. Most good high school jazz bands use an upright acoustic bass, and for most things, and a standard electric for styles like funk and some Latin and rock and roll if they do any of that. And then a 15-inch amp with a 15-inch speaker is the right size that you want. If this were a jazz band rehearsal, right, this would be the saxes, that would be the trombones, the trumpets would be standing back there. The drum set would be over here, just off the end of the trombone section. And then the bass amp would be back behind the drums on a chair. It's got to be on a chair, otherwise part of the sound gets blocked. You put it on a chair and you point it over this way across the band so that the whole band can hear. The bass is non-directional sound. So it fills the room on its own. It doesn't need to be pointed anywhere. Although it's easier for this side of the band to hear the bass amp if it's pointed over this direction. So you want to do that. Piano should be over here. I use an electric piano, just a basic Yamaha with a speaker, and it's over here, kind of with the piano player facing this way, right, and kind of over. Right now they're in the corner, way away from the band, but when it's on the stage, they're sitting right about here, looking across the saxophones, and the speaker's pointed out this way. The guitar player will sit right here off the end of the saxophones with the speaker behind them. Yeah, so that's where the rhythm section sits. You want them to be where they can all make eye contact with each other because they should be communicating while they play. The bass player should be following the time of the hi-hat and the ride cymbal on the drums. By the way, who's the timekeeper in a band, in a jazz band? Who keeps time? So percussion, we had drums.
The whole group.
There we go. Everybody keeps time in the jazz band, right? But you got to have a drummer that can nail it and nail the time, because that's where the time feel comes from. The feel for the whole band comes from the drummer, and then the bass player communicates with the drummer and makes sure that the time is matched up, because the quarter notes of the bass have to be exactly with the 2/4 hi-hat on the drums. If those don't line up, then the band's going to have timing and phasing problems. Those two things have to line up. And then the ride cymbal, ding, ding, da ding, ding, da ding, ding, da ding, ding, da ding, right with the bass, the hi-hat in between. Right? And you get that going, and then the band can keep good time. And by the way, when you pick your drummer for the jazz band, sometimes you don't have a choice. You just got the kid with a pair of sticks who has a kit at home and they've never played jazz before, but you've got to figure out how to get them to do it, right? But if you have a choice, you want to get the kid who kind of has a feel for it and they've got a good feel for time. If they don't have a good feel for time, I don't care how well they can play the kit. If their time's not good, it's not going to work. So you've got to have a good feel for time. So that's the bass, the piano, the drum set. All right. All right. Now the horns. I told you where the horns go. The lead players, lead alto should be in the middle of the first row. Lead trombone right behind that, lead trumpet right behind that. So the first players are right in the middle of the group, right? And then out from there. And your lead sound is lead trumpet is primary, lead alto is right below that, and lead trombone is kind of not really any quieter, right? They just don't have the point of the sound, right? And then your section players listen in, so the lead player's job is to listen to the bass player for intonation. That's where your intonation of the band comes from, is the bass player. And then your section players listen into the lead players for their intonation. All right, so you always tune to the lead player, and you listen to the lead trumpet for style of articulation and dynamics. And if lead trumpet isn't playing, you listen to lead alto, and if lead alto's not playing, you listen to lead trombone for all the style and articulation and all that. That's how that goes. So, and then you want to put your low instruments, bari sax, on that end over there, right behind it, bass trombone, on that side of the band. All right, so, yeah, so now the one that's at page that says drums, hi-hat, ride, drum grooves. The other thing with your drummer that's real important is, okay, so they can play ding, ding, da ding, ding, da ding, ding, da ding, ding, that's great, but can they play da, 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 da? They do a bossa nova pattern. They gotta know a bossa nova pattern. Can they play a good funk groove? Because you're going to do a variety of music, and the drummer's got to know those patterns. Because if you're having to teach the drummer the patterns while the band's over here, trying to figure it out, it's not going to. Right? So they need to know those basic. So the difference, a tight shuffle and a loose shuffle. The tight shuffle is the original jazz swing pattern. And it's on the hi-hat and the snare drum going both the snare drum and the hi-hat, same rhythm, right? It's kind of a tough pattern to play, but that's the original shuffle jazz pattern for drum set from way back in the 20s. And then eventually drummers started kind of going for variations, and they added a cymbal and they added the ride, and they started going ding, ding, da ding, ding, da ding. That's the loose shuffle. So you have the tight shuffle and the loose shuffle, and they should know both, because some charts at the top it'll say shuffle, and when it says shuffle, it's a tight shuffle. If it says swing, it's a loose shuffle. So you need to know the difference between the two and make sure your drummer can play both of those patterns. Because now we're talking about the correct style for the piece, the way it's written. And then brush patterns they need for ballads and such, swing ballads, straight ballads. The drummer's got to know how to play brush patterns. Okay, and I mean, you would need a drummer to come in here and show you, okay, here's a brush pattern to do. All right, and so the best thing to do is go to YouTube and just go drummer brush pattern and watch it. Okay, I can't tell you how many times I've used YouTube as a resource. I don't know how to do this. Go to YouTube, look for it. Boom, watch the video. Okay, now I got it. Right? That's your literally your number one resource for stuff you don't know. Right? So yeah, use it. Yeah, bossa nova, cha-cha, so clave is not just an instrument, a percussion instrument, right? Two little sticks that you go ding, 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 right? It's not, no. Does anybody know what clave really is? What's clave?
It's a 3/2 or a 3/2 or 2/3 pattern in Latin music.
Right, and you know, three, well, you know, so yeah, 2/3 or 3/2 clave for bossa nova, right? But there are different claves for different styles of dance and Latin music, right? So there's cha-cha clave, there's bossa nova clave, there's, you know, they all have a different clave, and it's a rhythm the percussion section plays, right, that the dancers dance to, and that the music is written to. So when you're teaching a specific Latin song, you've got to know what the clave for that song is to teach to the rhythm section so they play the right clave. Right, so, and now the claves are the instrument that quite often play the clave of the song, right? And that's why they're called the claves. So, so there's that. Funk music, rock music. I don't teach a lot of rock and roll to my jazz band. I mean, they can listen to all that they want to, but rock and roll just doesn't fit a jazz band because rock and roll's for a rock and roll band, and the instrumentation doesn't quite fit, right? So now the next step, you know, is about the music you choose, and that's the most important thing when you want the group to be successful is you assess what their abilities are, where they honestly are, right? Not where you want them to be, not where, you know, well, I want my middle school jazz band to play grade 4, you know, high school jazz band music and kill it at festival. Yeah, they're gonna kill it all right. You honestly assess where they are as their teacher, and you give them the music that you know they could realistically learn in 2 to 3 weeks' time. And if you give them a piece and you find that 8 weeks later you're still banging on measure 4, then that's too hard for them. So you find out where they are and give them that music, because you want them to feel successful. The more they feel successful, the more they'll practice and the more they'll want to get better. But if they feel like they're just failing the whole time, and you're saying, no, you're doing it wrong all the time, they're gonna go, oh, I'm done with this. I don't feel successful, right? But if you're saying, that sounds great, that's the way it's supposed to be, you're doing a great job. If you're saying that a lot, then you're pushing them in the right direction, and they're gonna go that way. So yeah, choose your music. That's for jazz band and concert band, your number one friend is the music you choose. And for choir too. It's the music you choose. And are they gonna like it? I don't choose music that I don't like. I don't choose music that I don't wanna listen to. I don't choose music that I don't think is good music. I choose music for my kids. I mean, I'm a musician. I still play professionally every now and then. And so I've been able to have a career in both teaching and somewhat playing my trombone in professional groups, and so I choose music that I would enjoy playing as a player. And that means I can teach it from my standpoint of liking the music, because if I like it, they're gonna like it, or at least they're gonna play it. And if I don't like it, that's gonna show in how I teach it. So there's so many great charts published out there. When I started teaching jazz years and years ago, the J.W. Pepper list of jazz music was so small. Now it's huge. There's so many new charts coming out every year to choose from, all different styles, well written. Even the easy stuff sounds more mature because of how they write it. Some good writers and arrangers here. Even got Matt Harris in there. Now my group plays some of Matt's charts. Some of his charts are some of my favorite ones to teach, because, I mean, you would think, well, it's Matt Harris. He doesn't write for middle school. Yeah, he does. And he writes really good charts for middle school that are fun to teach. And so I play his music. Yeah, Armando Rivera, is it really Armando Rivera? He's some other guy. He calls himself Armando Rivera when he writes a Latin chart. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I forget who it really is. Somebody told me one time, but anyway. Text, the only two that I use right now, I did this clinic here about 5 years ago. And the same clinic, and I gave out a handout like this, and it was this handout, but I reworked it for this one because I do things a little differently now than I did then. I've learned, right? And so I had a long list of texts. I deleted all of them except two. And right now, these are the only two that I use and that I think are truly effective and not overkill. A lot of texts out there are full of stuff for the kids to learn that's extra stuff they don't really need right now. They just need the song and a few easy notes to play, and they're off, okay? All right, so rehearsal. You can read through that. Balance and intonation. You know, the jazz band is just a small concert band, right? So the same principles of balance and blend and intonation that apply to a concert band apply to a jazz band. Right? Good tone quality first. Don't even think about intonation until they have good tone quality. Right? After they have good tone quality, then you can tune them. Right? We're how many weeks into the school year am I now? I'm 4 weeks into the school year. I haven't tuned my advanced band yet, right? I haven't tuned them once. I'm still working on balance, blend, and tone, right? And as soon as they start getting the tone and what's cool about it is when you do it that way, you start to hear them tune themselves, right? I want to find out, can they intuitively play in tune without me tuning them, right? And so I hear them, oh, now they're adjusting. I can hear them trying to find each other, right? And then when they get close, okay, now we'll tune. I bring out the phone, turn on the tuner, all right, now we tune. And I find that they're very close to each other already, and it's just a small adjustment we have to make, right? But I don't whip out the tuner right away and go, I want them listening. I want them trying to find each other. And I mean, our first concert isn't until December, right? And so right now it's just let's start playing some stuff and intuitively making this work, and through listening. And so yeah, that's kind of how I don't know. Is that different than what anybody's told you, or that no? Okay, I don't know. I live in a cave. It's called a band room. You know, so balance and intonation is just like anything else, any other group. Rhythm section, some books there to look at. The voicings they use are really important because you can't just play 1 through 5, 7 stacked up for the chords. You have to rearrange the voicings to make them sound like good jazz voicings. A lot of times those voicings don't have the root. You do the chord without the root because the bass player is playing the root of the chord all the time. So a lot of times the piano player doesn't need to play the root. So in a lot of charts that you get, you'll get the piano part and you'll see a bunch of stuff in the right hand, a bunch of stuff in the left hand, and a lot of that left hand is down in the bass range. Tell the piano player to leave all that out because it gets in the way of the bass and it becomes too much bass voice. And you want the bass to be the bass voice and the piano to be in the middle of the keyboard, right? So like F below tuning B flat up to C above that. Right in there is where you want the piano comping to happen. So a fifth below middle C and an octave above middle C is where you want them living on the keyboard for their comping. They can go above sometimes and below sometimes, and most of the time right there in the middle of the keyboard is where you want them to be. Guitar, there it is. So neck pickup, turn the yada yada, I already told you. It's Freddie Green style for playing in a swing chart. So Freddie Green was Count Basie's guitar player. Yeah. And he never took a solo ever in his career. He just sat there with his guitar in Count Basie's band going, and literally playing short quarter notes on every beat of every measure. And that's how Freddie Green played. So when you watch a dance band play and you watch the guitar player and they're playing, say, a blues or a shuffle, and you watch them, you're probably just gonna see them going, the whole time, right? And that's because they're playing like Freddie Green. Now, when they go to take a solo, then they turn the thing up and they play their solo and they're all over the neck and they do their thing. But then when they go back to comp the band, sometimes the piano player will take a break from comping and the guitar player do the comping, right? And then they'll mix it up a little bit with rhythms. And then the guitar player will stop and the piano player will comp. They can switch back and forth, right? You can do that. But if it's piano and guitar comping at the same time, piano player's doing all the rhythmic improvisation with their comping. They make everything up as they go. The guitar player's just doing this. And the reason is they don't want to get in each other's way. Right? It becomes too much. All right, so the bass, foundation, rhythm and harmony in the band, quarter notes mostly in the walking bass line. Every now and then you can put some eighth notes and some triplet hoodle-hoodles, but don't do too much. So if your bass player suddenly starts putting in a bunch of syncopations and a bunch of weird stuff, you gotta tell them to stop. Because they gotta go boom, 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 more better before anything else. They gotta be able to do that and keep time with the drums. Okay, jazz festival. I've been to more jazz festivals than I can count with my bands. I remember the first one I ever went to, never been to one before. I was teaching at Jordan Middle School in Burbank. I did that for 2 years. And how many of you have been to Jordan? Yeah. So in 1997 and 98, I was the band director at Jordan. And I had a jazz band there. It was my first middle school jazz band. And so I took them to a jazz festival over here in Simi Valley, right? And so I didn't know anything. I'd never taken a band to a jazz festival before. I didn't know what to do. We played 25 or 6 to 4 by Chicago, right? So here's my band playing, and we're the only middle school band at this jazz festival. All the other bands are high schools, right? Only middle school band in the middle school division. And here we are playing na 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 25 or 6 to 4, right? One of my favorite songs ever. And I didn't know any better. I show up with scores, give the judges all the scores and everything. I think I'm on top of it, and didn't realize I don't need them. Judges don't use scores at jazz festival. So I've really, literally never been to one where they ask me for a score. So you don't need to take them. The music you choose is important. You want to generally do a swing style, a blues, a ballad, and a Latin chart. You can toss in a funk chart if you want. Those are acceptable, but don't do rock and roll. They don't like rock and roll at jazz festival. You get laughed at. Emphasis on improvisation. And this is for making the judges happy. I hate to give this perspective, but you go to the thing. Some of them are competition, some of them are not. Most of them are. A lot of the bands are there for the competition. You can watch the kids, and they're on the edge of their seat at the awards thing. Did we get first place? Did we get second place? Did we beat that band? That kind of, right? How many of you were in jazz band in high school? Yeah, you remember, right? You know the band across town, they're your enemy, we got beat down, right? You don't realize that all of the directors for those bands are hanging out in the hospitality room, having a good time together. We're all friends, right? And so I don't care if I beat this guy's band or not. I just want my kids to have a good time and play well and feel like they did a good job, right? I do want the scores the judges give us to reflect the job I think they did, okay? But first place, second place, I don't care about. Right? But if my band nailed it to the wall and a judge gives them a 65, I'm gonna have a problem with that because, not that I'm gonna go yell at the judge, but there comes a time where you gotta ignore the points because some of the judges are like, what are they listening for? I don't know, because we really played that well and, it sounded really good. But they gave us a 65, so I don't know what their standard is. So I don't know quite what to tell the kids in that case, right? And so a lot of times, sometimes I will play that judge's recording for the kids. Sometimes I won't, but I listen to it before I play it for the kids. If I think they'll get something out of it, I'll play it. If not, I won't. But emphasis on improvisation, because the more of that you can do, that's what the judges are looking for. They want to see the kids standing up and playing. They don't care if it sounds good. They really don't, right? They want the kid up and playing, and so they can say, hey, good job, kid, that sounded really good. And so yeah, you want a lot of your kids playing solos. Yeah, so other than that, it's all explained right there for the festivals. Your equipment for festivals, it's different for every festival, what they provide and what they don't. They'll always send you a packet ahead of time telling you, we provide this, we don't provide this. Right? They never provide cables for amps, so always take your guitar cable, your bass cable, your keyboard cable, all of that. Some of them require you take your whole drum set, some of them require you just bring your cymbals, and they provide everything else. So you just have to read the packet and know what to take. All right, I think I went through the whole thing. Yes?
Are these jazz festivals open to the public? Like, is there a feel for them?
Yeah, they are. Most of them are fundraisers for the school band program, so they'll charge admission. But yeah, they're open to the public, so your parents can go with you. The bands participating always get in free, so the kids will get a wristband to get in, but parents have to pay for a wristband to get in to listen. Yeah, any other questions?
How did you first recruit for one of your initial jazz bands?
Well, the very first one I had was, I told the kids, hey, we're having a jazz band, who wants to do it? And a bunch of them signed up and we had a jazz band. And now, it's kind of a thing where we've had a jazz band at Los Rios for so long, the community knows it, the kids coming into the school know it, so they kind of anticipate, hey, I want to be in that jazz band. And so I have two bands, and to get into the second band, they just have to play something for me that I ask them to play, but they all get in on any instrument. I don't care. I'll take an oboe in my second jazz band, right? They all get in, and then I teach them in that band how to play jazz and have fun playing jazz. The top band is more selective. They have to audition to get in, and I set them out of each instrument and that kind of thing, and they have to play some specific things for me to get into that band. But yeah, that's generally how I recruit. But most teachers who want to start a jazz band, they have a lot of success just saying, hey guys, sign up sheet for the jazz band is over there. We're going to rehearse on this day after school, this time, go sign up. You probably get a lot of kids. And take everybody. I mean, seriously. I mean, tell them, look guys, I can't take 8 drummers, I'm sorry. Right? But take as many of them as you can. And don't worry about your instrumentation, just have a jazz band. Yes?
So if you have an after-school, middle school jazz band, about how many times a week are they rehearsing?
Well, I don't have an after-school jazz band. Mine's during the class every day.
Oh,
Yeah. But my jazz band at Thousand Oaks High School, I teach the second band there. It's after school 3 times a week for an hour and 15 minutes.
and then in middle school, is it just, they can only take one elective, so it's either going to be the concert?
They can take 2 electives at my school because we have a 0-period PE class. So all the kids who want to take 2 electives take that early morning PE, and it opens up an extra class in their school day, so they can do 2 band classes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Do you throw in the educational part of jazz band throughout the year, or do you is it more in the beginning?
What do you mean educational part?
Like with chords and the idea?
I do it all
of
year
chords
long. Yeah, we do it all year long. And I keep it as simple as possible. And I don't talk to them as much about the chords and how to read the changes yet, because throwing all that at them at one time, it just goes there. They get none of it, right? So I literally tell them, all right guys, it's in this key, we're gonna use this scale, and you're gonna play these 3 notes. And use your jazz rhythms and just do that. And then I just intuitively let them add their own stuff, right? I don't talk about the changes very much. Oh, you need to play this, F sharp sus chord, that kind of, no, they're not gonna get that. And the changes, by the way, in the charts that the publishers send out are usually too complicated for the kids. So when they get to that section where all the chord symbols are, tell them to ignore all that, right? And I literally tell them, okay, so this is an F7 chord. Ignore the 7, right? You want an F there. Okay? And ignore the numbers, ignore all the frilly stuff, and just look at, that's a note name it's telling you there. So that's an F chord, so play an F. That's a B flat chord, play a B flat, right? Then we start to branch off. Okay, now let's add this scale, now play this note and this note. They'll figure out the chords on their own intuitively as they go, and if they're studying with a private instructor, the private teacher can work with them on it some. But I've found over the years that as soon as I get into trying to tell them about that, they switch me off. So, yeah, we work on it a little bit. I have them on some blank staff paper, learn how to draw chords and stack them up and spell them, that kind of thing. But having them actually try to follow the changes, well, I don't really do that. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any like regular homework that you have, or like standard homework that you make them do once a week?
No, anything we're gonna do worksheet wise, we do it in class. The only homework they have for me is they're required to practice a minimum of 100 minutes a week. 5 practice sessions a week for 20 minutes. That's my practice requirement. Any more than that, and they start to buck the system. These kids these days are so busy. I mean, you're not gonna believe it. They're playing 5 sports, and they're in band, they're in choir. They're doing everything they can possibly do. And so I have to figure out a way to present it to them that they say, oh, okay, I can fit that in. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes?
What happens in the rare case that you do have these 8 drummers, like you said? What do you do?
Well, in jazz band, I don't.
But
Right? I have 4 in my jazz band class. And so that class will eventually split into 2 bands.
okay.
All right, each band will have 2 drummers.
Okay.
And I always have at least 2 drummers in a band because you never know when one's gonna get sick and you need the backup, right? But I don't overload that because then there's nothing for me to do.
Okay.
Have you ever had it where you had no drummers?
No, I've had it where I had no bass players, so I had a piano player play the bass line on a keyboard, right? But never had no drummer. That's almost impossible. There's so many drummers out there. Here, kid, here's some sticks, there's a kit, you're my drummer. That's all it takes. Any questions about other than jazz, like concert band, how do other things work? Yes?
What do you do when you're trying to develop ensemble intonation? Like, what are your 2 or 3 go-to?
Ensemble intonation. Well, I have a warm-up we use. It's very simple. I call it the LCMS band warm-up, and it's 2 measure long tones, and the first line is 2 whole notes with a whole rest at the end, repeated. Okay, so we play 2 measures, measure of rest, go back, do it again. The next line, 2 half notes and a whole note. All right, whole rest. Next line, 4 quarter notes and a whole note. All right, so we then 8/8 notes and a whole note. We play down that page on a concert F or a concert B flat. We work on our balance and blend. We start working on our intonation. After I do it for a while, especially my top band, I start seeing my flutes pull their instrument down and pull out or push in, trying to adjust, right? And I just watch them for that. I haven't pulled out a tuner yet. I'm just trying to get them to listen and develop what they can hear and what they can match. So you're getting all that worked out, balance and blend and tone, and the intonation starts to be adjusted by the kids. And then once they get to a point where I know they can't really get it, zeroed in, then I pull the tuner out. Okay, let's finish this up. But, and then you teach them about, okay, listening down. You teach them about, balance and blend. My thing with balance and blend is, okay, make sure that you're playing a little quieter than the people on either side of you. Okay, that's generally my way of teaching balance and blend. And if you're hearing yourself more than everybody else, you're playing too loud. And one of the kids asked, how does that really work? Because if I'm playing quieter than him and he's playing quieter than me, how does that really work? And I'm like, exactly. But it works. As soon as I tell them to do that, the balance and blend fixes itself almost. And then the only thing I tell them is the low instruments need to be louder than everybody else. So no matter what, play quieter than the low instruments. God, balance and blend I could spend an hour on. Okay, so don't get me started. I'm gonna stop right there. Did that help you? Did that answer? That's kind of my go-to thing. Yeah, all right, any other questions? Yes.
For high school or middle school?
I teach middle school, so what I just talked about was what I do with my middle school. Yeah.
Well, like, how's the difference, like, feel like teaching a high school group and a middle school?
Well, the high school kids know more, they don't need as much, it's this rhythm, it's this note, it's this, right? So they can process a lot of that on their own, and then I'm working more on the stylistic interpretation of the music, right? They're more intuitive, that kind of thing. That's the big difference, right? And they understand my sarcastic sense of humor a lot better. Yeah, that's the big difference. They're still nuts, they're still crazy, they're still a complete pain in the butt, right? But yeah, that's the big difference. Anything, and by the way, if you need to go somewhere, fine. If you want to stay here longer and ask questions, fine. Yeah, totally up to you, right? So if you need to go, feel free to go. If you want to ask me more questions, if we're done, we're done. If you want to ask me more questions, you can ask me more questions.
I guess, well, our hour is up, so
See ya.
we technically don't have the room right now.
Got it, okay.
So, yeah, thank you so much for coming out.
Sure.